All right. What's up, boys and girls, pals and gals? Welcome to, I think we're at episode 14 of the Sexy Business Status podcast. I'm your host, Jason Payne, and I got in the studio with my boy, one of my homies, and I'm actually a client of his.
True that.
Stephen Harris.
Yes, sir. I've been with you since day one.
Journey Payroll. Yeah, dude.
Journey Payroll. I remember you starting State 48 Roofing, and you're like, dude, I don't want to do payroll. You my guy? And I said, yeah, man, I'll be your guy. And we've been there since day one. You've been crushing it since.
Yeah, dude, we were in B&I together, and he's like, payroll. And I'm like, dude, I think of payroll and I want to barf. I'm like, I'll give you the money to do it, but like, you and Dory figure it out. That was literally what I said. I was like, I have this really cool chick. Her name's Dory. She does all that stuff. She's not a CPA, but she could be. She's certified QuickBooks. She's a G. Between her giving it to you and you cutting my guy's checks, I'll bring in the money and put in the bank account. You take care of the rest. He's
I like to say that we pay your employees with your money, so we make that part easy.
It's fantastic. Yeah, and you take a nibble of it. Yeah,
right.
It's great.
No, it's one of those things where the payroll service and the payroll. It's you got to think about when you're starting a business. You got to think about the things you got to outsource, right? And that work that takes you away from the things that you do best. It's an easy log on, plug in hours, submit. Takes a matter of a couple of minutes, see all your totals, file all the taxes, do all the things. And when you're starting a new business like you were, it was just I always recommend smartest decision you can ever make is outsourcing your payroll, outsourcing the financial aspects if that's not what you're.
Well, especially if that's not your background. Like if you came from payroll or you owned a payroll company, do it in house because you could do it in your sleep. It takes 2 seconds. Hire somebody $20 an hour and this and that, and make it happen. But I didn't come from that side of things. I came from the blue collar side. I came from production and crews and sales and all those things. I didn't come from on the back end of that kind of stuff where Dory did. And so I was like, dude, no brainer. So I wanted you to come on for a couple of reasons. Three. One, I'm a client of yours and we haven't touched base in a while. Number one. Yep. Number two is similar to roofing. I make roofing sexy. You make payroll like exciting.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we try. It's not the sexiest thing in the worord.
But that's the thing. Like sexy payroll status. Like that should be a shirt, right? It could be a thing. Because what happens is the mental mindset, like, payroll. It's funny you talk about it. Like beginning of the year is like your go time, right? To sign up people and
for sure.
Screw these guys. We want to switch over to blah blah blah. I'm like, dude. No matter who you use, I mean, obviously there's value in the people that you do use, but at the same time, you have to have somebody. Right, especially if you're cruising, you're cranking, and my payroll's $100,000. I see your emails every freaking week, and you're like, oh, Journey Payroll is gonna take out $96,000. I'm like, what? But $100,000 a week payroll, like that's a real thing.
Yeah.
Right, and you see the numbers and whatnot, but it's something where you can, when you trust somebody that knows what they're doing and they're very good at it and they're precise. Like to me, I want the peace of mind knowing that you and Dory. One, if you make Dory's life living hell, I will fire you in 2 seconds.
Right.
And that goes with anybody. I'm like, you make Dory's life, and Dory's very easy to get along with, very level-headed. And so whether it's you guys or a supplier or whatever, I'm like, if you'd make Dory's life miserable, you will no longer, I will no longer transact with you.
Cut you out.
Well, because it goes from a transformation to a transaction. At that point, I can go to a freaking ATM, Right. And so it's a. Yeah, you've been with us for 3.5 years now.
Yeah, and we've built. I mean, it's wild. We've built our team exponentially. We've tripled in size since then.
Love it.
Dory's got a dedicated payroll specialist. It's not. I'm not in there, doing the things.
Which is good. We're going to talk about that in a second.
Yeah, so our team freaking rocks, and that's what it's all about. I think accessibility is one of the most underrated assets when you don't know you have it, right? You can go to the big national publicly traded companies, call a 1-800 number, get your stuff done. Hey, how do you set up this deduction? I need to change direct deposit. How do I do this? Whatever.
Save a couple bucks.
Yeah, wait on hold, and not even save a couple bucks. They're doing price increases yearly and all that kind of stuff. So that was my background for 10 years before we launched Journey in Phoenix in 2017. And so we saw the good things, but we didn't, there was definitely some room for improvement, let's say. And we wanted to build relationships with our clients and we have a mindset of supporting the community that supports us, right? Whether it's through charity efforts and things like that, but more so, how do we support small business at a high level?
So when you say small business, up to how many employees do you guys normally take on?
Our bread and butter is, our largest client's about 350 employees. But we really focus on the under 150 or so.
150. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, our average clients, we have a lot of small, single owner S corp type guys, like your doctor who gets his salary from the hospital. It's a 1099 income, self-employment income.
Sure.
So we run that reasonable salary. Your realtors, those. So we have a ton of those.
One-offs.
Yeah, one-offs. But yeah, small business under 100, under 150.
Well,
like
it's funny because we're talking about stereotypes and averages and whatnot. The average business owner has less than 10 employees, does less than $3 million in revenue, and goes out of business within 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's like over half is going out of business in 5 years. Even higher, right, in the first year or 3 years. Right?
Yeah. For first year is like, it's 90%, and then out of the 10% that stay, 80% of that 10% are gone at year 3. And so the pie just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And I think one of the big reasons why is because they don't know what to charge.
Yeah.
Right. And then they don't understand. And Grant Cardone is the epitome of this. He talks about you underestimate how much action and how much effort you need to put in order to get the results that you want.
Yeah.
For anything.
Well, it all comes down to preparation, right? If you're going to start a business, you got to at least know what it is that you're getting into. You got to know your market. You got to know your industry. You got to know your competitors. You got to know your price point. Like when I was at ADP, right? So the largest payroll company in the world, right?
Sure.
So I was there for 10 years. And 2016, for a full 12 months before we launched, was preparation for launch, right? It's not like we just woke up and be like, oh, let's go do this, right? Yeah. And so I think a lot of business, like they get the idea of like, oh, I want to, follow my dreams and all these things, which is great. But if you're not prepared for it and you didn't define what your purpose is and like what it is you want your life to look like, and you're ready to put that work in, and then all of a sudden you get in 6 months later, you're like, oh shit, this is a lot harder than I thought.
I really don't want this.
Yeah.
Well, and it always is. And I think the biggest thing is like, I feel like it's twofold though, because I feel like some people get stuck. We're going to talk about you and kind of what happened with Meniscon, that little fire that lit under your ass at Meniscon. But I feel like a lot of people, preparation is huge. I also did that as well too. And full disclosure, the company I worked for before I started, I was at Griffin with Russ Hyman. He's actually one of my good buddies still. We go on trips every year for roofing. I told him when I went over there, I said, hey, I'm going to start my own roofing business. I don't know if it's going to be in a year or 5 years or 10 years, because people always say, oh, I'm going to start my own business.
Yeah.
And then 3.5 years later, they're still working for you. They still haven't left. They still,
right.
Because some people underestimate when they realize, like, holy shit.
It's hard to take that jump. I mean, it's a big.
And the liability, the risk, there's like, who do you go to as a CEO of Journey Payroll? Like, who do you go to for mentorship? Who do you go to when an employee brings you a problem or, hey, I got a question. Like, who do you go to? Like, you have a little like fairy that just whispers all the answers to you. Like, no, you got to. We call it FITFO. Figure it the fuck out. Like, you got to figure it out, man.
Well, and I was blessed because when we started in 2017, Journey actually was born in 2010, and I met the true CEO of Journey. It's headquarters in Fort Collins, Colorado. It was a totally different name back then. Okay. Met him when I was at ADP selling a tax software, trying to get him on board as a client. And I was living in Denver at the time, and I was like, hey, Kevin, I want to, his name's Kevin Welch. And I said, hey, I want to meet you. I'm moving back to Phoenix. This is 2013, 15 timeframe.
Okay.
And he goes, all right. So the whole point was trying to get him on this tax software that I was selling for ADP to get him, whatever.
Sure.
And we spent 15 minutes talking about Master Tax was the name of the product. The other hour and 45 was figuring out how we could partner together and how I could own and run a Phoenix location. And so we rebranded from what was TLC Payroll to Journey Payroll. I looped in my business partner, Jamie. She is the best closer in the industry, a absolute rock star sales, but everything, like operation, everything. So we both came in, and I remember going to her and I said, hey, what if we've always had this dream of starting our own payroll company when we were at ADP, and part of that preparation stuff, right?
Sure.
I remember taking a step back. I remember talking to my dad and be like, Dad, I kind of want to start my own payroll company. And I was 24 years old. And I remember I started in the ADP world, in the Master Tax world, when I was 22. And so I'd been 2 years selling, and I go, I want to start my own payroll company. He goes, look, this was my dad's company, actually. He was the developer of Master Tax software program. And he said, you know what? I'm selling the company at ADP. I want you to learn everything you possibly can. Be a sponge, because when you're ready to make that jump, you'll be ready and you'll know it. And so that was the best advice I ever got. So I stayed with ADP for 7 years, took leadership, got certified in payroll. It was actually a certification for it. Total dorky stuff. But I was in sales and I wanted to have credibility, right? Long story short, I reached out to Jamie. I go, what if we partnered instead of starting from complete scratch? And she goes, tell me more. And so 2016, we flew out to Fort Collins, met with these guys, figured out how it was all going to work. And legally, once the attorneys got involved, they said it had to be a franchise agreement. Otherwise, Kevin would have ownership in our location, and we didn't want that. We wanted to build our work family. We wanted to build our business. So everything's locally owned and operated. We just leveraged the foundation of software and leveraged a website, right? And also had that back end support as we were getting going. But I think that I could have, starting Journey Phoenix by myself would have been a completely different challenge, even with them on, for support too. So bringing Jamie in and partnering in business together, it's just been an incredible ride. And I think it's, you really have to think about those things. Like, I think a lot of people want to start something on their own and have it be all mine. But when you can partner and find the right partners to do something, you can do some really great things.
Well, and I think the fresh wound that I'm still going through with partnerships.
Yeah.
But yeah, I honestly think that if you do your due diligence and your checks and balances,
partner, right?
and everybody's, there's Sean Whalen used the word radical, when you're radically open and communicative with your spouse, with your kids, with your family, with with your business partner about what you want to do and how you want to do it. I think any partnership will work out great, but when that communication stops and the checks and balances stop, I think that's when a lot of gray area and a lot of red flags happen. So,
and partnerships don't have to be equity business partners. It's partnerships with finding the right vendors and the right people and the right processes to have other keeping eyes on things. And, I know, with what you went through, it's just a sucky situation. But you can learn from it. And at the end of the day, there's no such thing as failure, right? So the next thing that you do, you learn from that and you pivot and learn, but you don't run and hide. And that's what I think is pretty incredible about you is you are just you're like, damn, that sucked. All right, boom, we're going this way now.
Yeah, within 72 hours, I had a LLC set up, and I had I already had agreements lined up, ready to rock and roll. Yeah. I had this within 5 days of that crap, hitting the fan.
If that's not the sexiest thing I've seen from you, Mr. Payne, I don't know what is, because that's dope. Right?
Dude,
it sucks. You get punched and you get right back up.
Well, that thing is like, some people are like, okay, I'm going to lay down on the ground. Well, how long do you want to lay on the ground for?
Right.
Because either way, you still have to get back up.
Right.
Now, if you raise a white flag and say I quit, I just talked about this morning on my I was doing a post gym video, and it was talking about failing versus quitting. And I was like, we all fail. We're all going to fail. Yeah. And that's how growth happens, is when you learn, if you're going to fail fast.
Yeah.
Right. And when it comes to, quitting is not an option, because quitting is admitting failure and that you're not willing to fail anymore and that you're just done.
Right.
With me, it was like, no, I just had a bad experience. I had a bad relationship with this partnership, and I needed to move on. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to bitch and moan? Am I going to, grab the bottle? Am I going to grab the gun? Am I going to just, raise the flag and say, screw everybody? Right. Am I gonna, what am I gonna do? Yep. And so I said, well, I still want to fulfill to my clients. I still love coaching. I feel like I'm good at it. I have 30 plus, clients that I'm helping. Josh Tixon that joined BNI.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We were just talking about him.
He did, I think, maybe $1 million or so. His first year, the year before that, he landed a few 100,000. I think he's on track to do 4 million this year.
Dude, that's incredible.
And so I'm like, dude, that gets me going. Like, I love selling roofs, and I love the whole sexy roof status game. Putting roofs on are fun, but dude, helping people change their small business and like generational wealth and really getting out of that poverty and that owner operator bullcrap mentality that they have to stay there forever. Right. You got to be there. You got to.
Yeah.
Tim Grover talks about it in his book, Winning. You got to go to hell and hang out there for a little bit, but then you don't stay there, you come back.
Right.
And so that's been one of my biggest things. But the point I was trying to get at earlier about me going when I was at Griffin is that entire year I was preparing to start my own business.
Exactly. Yeah.
From the things that I didn't know, right? Because normally when you work for somebody, you don't get exposed to all of the departments. You don't get exposed to, the overhead and the or maybe marketing and advertising you're exposed to, or if you're on the back end, maybe you do billing, but you don't know how to do production, or you don't know how to do sales. That was my biggest thing, is like, okay, cool. I want to see, because my uncle's company never did more than 5 million, and Griffin did like 10 to 15. And I'm like, hey, so going there, I'm like, I got to see how a true business, double, triple the size of what I'm used to for the past decade, what it looks like.
Right.
And so I went there and I, learned the tricks of the trade and what to do and what not to do, and a positive working environment and culture and core values and sustainability and whatnot, and getting out of that owner operator mentality that my uncle had into like really building a team, because Russ and Rebecca, they travel all the time.
Yeah. And
I'm like, but he still puts out every month, like they still produce and get results. And so a big part of me was like, okay, there's some people do it, some people don't. And I'm like, why do people want to do it? Why do people not want to. And I was like, I don't ever want to do that. I went to Disneyland and with my wife, and I was on my phone all the time. And when we got home, she was in tears and she was pissed. I'm like, what's your problem? We literally just went to Disneyland for like 3 or 4 days with our kids. How are you pissed? Like, you should be happy on cloud 9. We just went to the happiest place on earth.
Right.
She's like, you weren't there.
Right.
And I'm like, you know where I'm going with this? I'm like,
yeah.
What do you mean?
I've been in trouble with that too.
What do you mean I wasn't there? And she's like, you were physically there, but you were mentally there. You were checked out. You're on your phone. You're distracted. You're, on your laptop in the morning and at nights and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, I was like, I never want to do this again.
Yeah.
I was like, I'd rather.
You get caught, right? I mean, you get caught going down the rabbit hole, and there's never enough time, and there's so much to do.
Yes.
Right.
100%.
But you have to take that time, and it's taken me a long time to realize it too. But I don't think it happens until you talk about team a lot, until you build out that rock star team, and you go through a little bit of the turnover to find the right people and the right seats, and you find the right skills for the right roles and all those things, right? And they have the buy-in and the culture and what you're trying to, but you have to have the buy-in in your culture and the buy-in in the vision of what you've got. If they don't believe it, if you don't believe it, they're not going to believe it. Right?
No.
And so it's impossible. And you can't, in that owner operator, if you're out there, let's say we do a lot with the trades, like roofing, HVAC, whatever. And like a lot of the owners of the clients that we work for, they're out there in the field doing the things. And that's great. But if you want to scale to a level that you're talking about, or you want it to be able to take that time away with your family, and like what's really important in life is those closest to you. You can build a fantastic business, but happiness is driven by social interaction with the people you love, right? And so if you're in the field constantly and you can't take that time to have that space with your group, with your crew, then you have to be able to scale and build that team. But it comes down to that right culture.
Well, and I remember my dad telling me this even just a brief 2-3 years ago. Before I really, flipped the light switch for me, my dad and we go to Mexico twice a year.
Yeah.
Spring break, fall break, go to Mexico, like Rocky Point area, and we'll take our toy hauler and whatnot. But it would take us a day to prep for it, and then 3 or 4 days, and then a day back. So it's almost a full week commitment.
Right.
And my dad and I remember just joking, I'm like, yeah, because he's even more of a solopreneur than I was at the time. He's at his flooring company for 40 years, does amazing work, like awards and all kinds of good stuff, but it's literally him and him, and he subs out his crews for demo and for install. He's had the same contractor, same install guys for like 30 years, which is great.
Right.
But I'm like, if he goes out of town, like who answers his phone? Right. And so we had the joke about, you have to work 100 hours the week before for you to go out of town, and he had to work 100 hours when you get back to catch up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I was like, there's got to be a better way than this. And I'm like, I know people that go out to Disneyland and the only time they pull their phone out is to take pictures or videos of their kids, not answer phone calls or emails or put out fires. They're not in the hotel room at 4:30 in the morning doing emails and dispatching and all this shit. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way.
Yeah.
And so I told myself, I'm like, I will never, ever do this again. I was like, I'd rather not go to Disneyland than have that experience. And my wife be pissed at me. Yeah. And I was mad at her because she was mad at me. And I'm like, I'm the one that like totally wasn't even physically, like mentally there. And I'm like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And I was like, I either need to not be a business owner, or I need to hire somebody to take that delegate those responsibilities.
Right.
And so in my coaching program in Sexy Business Status, one of my very first question is, okay, who do you need to hire? Before we leave, I'm like, who are you going to hire?
Yeah.
I don't need to hire anybody. Bullshit. Who do you need to hire? And every time they come in, because we do audits every 90 days, come in, because once you solve that problem, it's going to create, that solution is going to create, bigger problems as you scale and you grow. And before we leave, I'm like, okay, who do you need to hire? Who do you need to hire? Who do you need to hire? And when you learn to hire and delegate those things, everything changes, right? Because if you're not scared of generating leads and generating sales, hiring and delegating that person to fulfill that, and that those we talked about this offline, off camera, those tasks and those responsibilities. It's the 2,500 rule that I teach all the time. A lot of those tasks are $20 an hour tasks. Me taking a phone call from a customer does not have to be me. That's a $20 an hour person. Maybe 30 or 50 or 100, whatever, but it's not 500. That's $1 million a year, by the way. $500 an hour.
Yeah.
That's not a $500 an hour phone call. It's just not. And the people that are those $500 an hour phone calls will not bug you when you're on vacation and say, hey, when I get back, cool. When you get back, let's touch base. Let's, this project, this contract, this investor, this whatever.
Right.
And so that's why I wanted to scale so fast and do it right. Cause I have 75 employees now.
Yep.
And I'm like, but it's so much more of the life that I want. Tommy Mello did this at MenaceCon 1. I think he did MenaceCon too, as well. But in July of last year, he said he's like, "Give me your phone for a month. Give me your phone for a month. I'm going to turn on airplane mode."
And you just got to go without it.
No, literally, like you get, and he said, "I'm gonna send you to Cabo with your wife and your kids for 30 days. You cannot touch your phone once. I'm literally gonna take your phone. I will keep your phone. You can't take your computer. You can't take an iPad. You can't take anything.
Yeah.
You and your wife for 30 days."
Oh man, that'd be awesome.
Right?
How difficult would that be to be like, you almost be itching. It's almost like a drug, right? You almost be
dude,
itching for like a couple of days. Probably the first couple of days be like, oh, this is great. And then
or even a week, you're like, oh, cool. And then you're like,
oh shit. What are all the things I got to do? What am I
What's
missing?
happening at home?
Yeah.
And that's where, like, he's like, that's where you know if you are a business owner and a CEO. We're talking about being a CEO versus a hustler.
Right.
Whether you're a CEO and you're a business owner, or if you're a high paid employee. People hate when I say that.
Yeah.
I tell them like, yeah, you're a high paid employee, and they're like, screw you, I'm a business owner. I'm like, I understand your name's on the LLC, and when shit hits the fan, you're the guy, you're the owner, but like, you're literally just getting paid more than the guy next to you, but you're not like that. That's not a business. Like when something happens at Coca-Cola and there's a spill, does a CEO of Coca-Cola go get a mop and go clean up the mess? The dude doesn't even live in that state, you know, like, and so that was one of the biggest things. I'm like, okay, how do I build a business with systems, processes, and the right people to where right now, true story, I could literally go out of town for a month, put my phone on there, and State 48 Roofing will do $1 million.
Yeah.
And I don't touch it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think what the hardest thing too is it's money, right? And so especially startup or small business, like, well, if I hire someone, that's a $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 salary.
They're terrified to give away that first $40,000 to $60,000 bucks.
But you have to think though, when you're an entrepreneur, you got to think long game. Like, what is this going to look like in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years?
Yes.
If I hire now, invest in my team, and constantly invest in my team. So we at Journey, we promote within. We don't hire on top. We don't hire outside, because it's all about the culture and the buy-in and the family, right?
Sure,
and then everyone, we develop and build everyone up, and we constantly give out bonuses and raises and things like that. But I don't. You know, Jamie doesn't. It's not the first 5 years. So we're coming up on 6 years, and this is the first time for me where I don't feel like the daily grind. And we'll kind of talk about what MenaceCon did in like the last 12 months, what my life has been like. But if you don't invest in your team early, or don't, pay that money to bring on the right people. Now, turnover is a very expensive thing, but you have to take that risk, and you got to own it, and then move on, pivot and learn. We always talk about, right? Pivot and learn.
Right.
There's no such thing as failure, but you have to take the money out of your pocket. Your business is investing in your team to grow higher and further, and it'll do it faster. But if you're constantly like, okay, I made $150,000 this year in revenue and I profited 50, I'm going to take the 50 for myself because I earned it. No, that's not entrepreneurship. That's not business. That you're not being a business owner. Yeah, your name's on the LLC, but you're not going to get very far if you're not investing back in your team and back in your processes and systems and for scale.
Well, and another part too is like I said, turnover is wicked expensive, right? But when you spend Brandon Natalie Dawson, right? 10X and Cardo Ventures, they teach this flawlessly. One about the PPFs, but apart from that, they talk about how, especially Brandon talks about how if you train someone correctly, they can do 80% of your job.
Yeah.
And what happens is all of us business owners, our egos are so big, and we think they're the shit, and we think nobody can do my job, nobody can do this.
Yeah.
It's like, if you train them correctly, they can do. Now, the 20% is your character, your personality, just your charisma, who you are. Yeah. Like, you cannot replace that. But he's like, that's only 20% of what you do.
Well, and if you think about every great idea, it very rarely was it brand new, invented from scratch. No. It's all 80% of what you've seen and learned and emulated from someone else, and then 20% is your spin on it. And you're wildly successful if you continue. Yeah. Like, you can't do it by yourself.
They call it model, mimic, master.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and that's what so I'm thinking about it right now, just in this pod. If you're listening, you can't see the student, you can't see the camera. But like, I have a sign here. I saw somebody else have a sign. Not this exact one, but something similar to it. I was like, oh, what should I put behind the cameras and the mics? I'm like, oh, let's do a sign. These little lights on the side, I saw literally 30, 60 days ago on somebody else's podcast. I was like, dude, those are dope.
Yeah.
I literally went to Amazon, boop, 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 boom, they're here.
Yeah.
Right? That Rodecaster, also on Amazon, but that came from one of my buddies who actually sets up, his name's Dylan, sets up podcasts. He's like, oh, you need a Rodecaster. It's great. I'm like, okay, cool. And the mics, I'm like, hey, where do I get a mic? And so all these are different, the camera, the lights, everything that we do, 80% of that came from somebody else. And it was just a good idea that
it works.
Yes. Right. You don't need to reinvent the wheel.
No.
If you're going to reinvent the wheel, only do it 20% of the time. But the other 80%, you literally just follow good practices from people that are killing it.
Right.
And that's where like personal development is so huge. So getting into personal development and going to MenaceCon.
Yep.
I hit you up. I hit you up and a handful of others to sponsor MenaceCon.
Yep.
I don't even know what it was, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, whatever it was. But I called you. I called a handful of other buddies, and I said, "Hey, one, I want you to support me. Two, I transact with you, so there's some credibility there. Like, hey, like I've given you, however many dollars over the past 3 years, and for the foreseeable future. So asking that way. But I also saw an opportunity where there's going to be hundreds of business owners that you could, get relationships with, get an email list, and go and start doing their payroll, or whatever trade that they were, whatever service, excuse me, they were offering."
There's a lot of small businesses there, and which was fit because every single one of them was small.
Well, and this podcast is for the small business owner that's either owner operator, high paid employee, might have a couple of employees, maybe they're doing $200,000-$300,000, $500,000 a year, maybe they're doing a few million a year, but most of them are small business owners.
And it was a good opportunity. And so I define a good opportunity as one that aligns with what it is that your mission is, right? Not saying a yes, man, jumping at every sponsorship opportunity, but yes, I knew you. But if it was like, hey, dude, I'm doing this conference, I'm doing MenaceCon, and everyone there is going to be like 500 employees or more, it's going to be dope. I'm like, no, it's not our focus. Our focus is small business.
It's not your audience.
It's not my audience. So when it was all small business and knowing that, I was like, hell yeah, let's go.
It's a gold mine.
Yep. Yeah.
So what made you sponsor? And then what was your experience about?
All right. So number one, I sponsored because it was you, right? And so State 48 knew all about that. And I had been watching you grow Menace for, I think we did this in January of this year.
Yeah. So almost a year.
Yeah. So
actually right at a year.
Almost a year. Yeah. But I wanted to bring my team too, because you had the speaker lineup and it wasn't just like your typical conference where it was just you or just your partners or, the speaker lineup was pretty dope, right?
Sure.
To say the least.
Well, I've been told it's one of the best that's ever been put together
ever. And what's funny is I didn't know a lot of those guys. Like I wasn't in that game.
Oh, really?
I wasn't at all. But I started listening to them, knowing who they were. And I was like, well, I should probably start listening to these guys and see what's going on.
Sure.
But the second was to give my team the opportunity to see these people, right? And so we brought there's 4 of us total.
Okay.
And so we sponsored. We had the booth. We might get a client or 2 out of it, but that actually wasn't our focus. And that's usually how these conferences, that we do sponsor. It's like, it's very rare. You might get 1 and it'll be worth it. But at the end of the day, if the lineup is good and the education is good, that's one of the main reasons why we would sponsor.
And the relationships.
Yes.
Right. You either create new ones,
right,
just like Nate Dominguez. So we have another event coming up in May, end of the month.
Yeah.
Jordan Adler and Nate are speaking at it.
Okay.
And network marketing, relationship marketing, all that kind of stuff, right? And Nate was just in here a week ago with my sales team about BNI and all that kind of stuff. And it's funny that you say that. And he's like, he was going to JJ or one of the boys end of the year baseball banquets, and he's like, I'm not gonna leave this room until I talk to one new person.
Yeah.
And create one new relationship.
So Josh, we're talking about Josh Tixon, right? And so I met him at MenaceCon, and I was invited him to BNI to come hang out with us. And I go, this is the best advice I give to every new person who walks into BNI who does have no idea what it is, but if you're a business owner, it's a way to blow up your business. I said, do not leave this room with at least 2 coffee meetings on your calendar. Like walk up to 2 random people and be like, hey, I'm Josh or I'm Steve, whatever. And be like, hey, can we get it on the calendar? Can you whip out your phone? Let's get on the calendar and develop the relationships. And that's what it's all about. And that's how we've grown our business at Journey, is all purely relationships. We don't get 10,000 Google leads. I actually shy away from giant, massive amount of leads. There's a lot of fraud in our industry. And so we'd rather get warm referrals from CPAs, bookkeepers, clients, and just being in the network. So that was absolutely one of the reasons why sponsoring is like, hey, this is a whole new group of people that we have probably never met before. We're not going to see too many familiar faces, maybe 3 or 4. Mm-hmm. And so let's go. And it blew our minds though. Like it wasn't, I don't even know how to describe it. It was coming in thinking we'd get some clients, see a couple of speakers, but it was jam-packed 2.5 days with 25, boom, hour speaker, boom, hour speaker, boom, hours. And you didn't want to leave the room. Like you were afraid you were going to miss something. Right. And you're taking notes. Like we call it the $1 million bathroom break. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah.
So what I thought was super cool about it was by bringing my team and having them experience that. I didn't care about them gaining a client or 2 because we brought 2 of our salespeople. And I said, sure, this is going to motivate them for the rest of the year. And it's my job to continue that motivation, right? They'll be on fire after that weekend, but it's my job now to continue that. But just seeing what's possible and all of the different words and the things that they're hearing will continue to motivate them to crush it for themselves and crush their goals.
Well,
right?
and that's the best part, because I go to these. So Grant talks about in his book, in the 10X Rule, he talks about the average millionaire reads 50 books a year. It's 50 or 60, but it's basically one a week. Reads basically a book a week and goes to 6 conferences a year, which is like one every other month.
Yeah.
And I was 29 at the time, and Nick Trevelyan, actually one of my best friends and partners in Menace, I went to his office, big, huge leather couches, big old real estate, BMWs in the parking lot type deal.
Yeah.
And I did all the roofs. And so we've been buddies for probably almost a decade at that time. And I was like, dude, we need to do a mastermind. We need to do something together. And I was like, hey, you gotta give me something to read. Give me who are you just getting, because he's a personal development junkie too. And I was like, give me something. He's like, hey, check this out. And it was the 10X Rule. Yeah. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And so I listened to that. And so by going to these conferences, you now get to, most of them have a book or a podcast or an Audible or something. Yep. And you start following them, and then you just get those daily nuggets, right? Instead of oh, you only get the big conference once a year. I'm like, dude, I follow these guys. I going through my feed, it's like a mini conference every day.
For sure.
And so that's been one of my biggest takeaways is I always buy all of their books. If they have Audible, I hop on it and listen to their book via Audible. Yep. And then I start following on social media, because most of them are very active on social media.
Yeah.
And then they throw their own events too.
Yeah.
Or they're going to go speak at another event. And so I'm like, dude, let's go to that one. It's like, he was so Ed Milet, oh, he's going to go be at this one or speak at this one or host his own. And so it's been a huge takeaway for me as I go to those too, because I love those. I'm going to probably 6 in the next 4 months.
What's the next one you're going to?
So we have our own event in May. Ryan Stewman,
$1
million closer. He's in Texas. He has one the first week of June. There's another, I forget who the other one is. There's another one end of June. I still have the conference from Grant Cardone's Growth Con. Yeah. But it's called a 10X 360. It's a 2-day mastermind. I'm in Kent Clothier, who is a speaker. So
he's the one, he talks a lot about going from hustler to CEO.
That's where we got the idea from.
Yeah. And then CEO to chairman or, whatever, right?
He has like a circle. Yeah. And so that's actually at the Princess, Scottsdale Princess, in 2 weeks.
Nice.
It's a mastermind that I'm in with him, and that's actually his mastermind. That's 2 days. But yeah, I almost try and go to one of those a month. Yeah. Just because it's what I realize, and it's not a cocky thing. It's just when you're the business owner and you're the owner of your business, you should be with your entire team. You should be the smartest person in the room. Right? Now, it doesn't mean that they're dumb. It doesn't mean that you're better than them. It just means that you have your shit more together than others.
So I would say, you hear the saying people hiring smarter than you and all that.
Yeah.
I would agree with that sentiment. Them being, what I would say is you're the best communicator in the room.
Yeah.
Meaning you're seeking knowledge. So communication is retaining, gathering, as well as giving it out.
Right.
So you're seeking knowledge constantly. You're preparing. You're just a knowledge seeker, and that's similar to how I am. It's just a mindset of I want to learn, right?
Right.
Now, naturally, you'll become smart because you're learning new things. But the more you can communicate that back to your team, you're a facilitator of knowledge. Right? As a business owner, if you're the smartest person in the room, but you're not facilitating and training your team on the things that you're learning,
oh, totally,
that's where you drop.
So my question is, where do you go to get that next level of knowledge? Because someone that you just hired 2 weeks ago that makes $40,000 a year, you're probably not going to get very much knowledge out of them at that point in time. Yeah. Right. So as a business owner, you got to go get that from somewhere else. Right. You go to a conference and this and that, and so that's where I personally go to the Andy Frisellas, the Ed Milets, the Grant Cardones, the Ryan Stewmans, the Ryan Pinedas, all the Andy Elliott, those guys. Yeah. Because they are doing, several commas and zeros more. And it's not always about the dollar amount, but it's the mindset. And it's those, like I said, and when I go to these things, it's really, there's just one nugget. Yeah. Right? I always tell people,
that nudge, just the one nugget that nudges you this direction.
Yeah. There's 2.5 days. There's 24 speakers. Yeah. I have people that come back with 30 pages of notes. It was the best conference ever. It was great. And I'm like, okay, that was 3 months ago. Yeah. What have you done? And most of them are I haven't implemented shit. And I'm like, so you just got to hide for 2.5 days and got to take a picture with Ed Milet. Right. Cool. I hate that. Yeah. We call it FTI, failure to implement. Yeah. Drives me freaking nuts. Yeah. On a one of my biggest pet peeves is just drives me nuts. So when we do these audits with our clients every 90 days, we'll go in an hour. I'll give them 5 to 10 or 15 ideas, things they need to implement, and I give them a highlighter. I literally have a box of highlighters in my bag.
Yeah.
And I was like, you can only highlight 3.
Yeah.
I was like, what we call it moving the needle. What 3 can you work on over the next 90 days that will move that needle?
Yep.
Everything else, forget it. They're great ideas. And if you do all 3, cool. You shouldn't be able to, it should probably take you 90 days to complete those things, because it's not like, learn how to tie my shoes. It's something significant, whether it's process, hiring and training somebody, whatever. And so I was like, take those 3 things. If you complete those 3 things, then you can go to the 4th and the 5th and the 6th. That's totally fine. But what happens is we get so excited, we take so many notes, and we're on cloud 9, and we have this momentum and adrenaline going, and then we don't do anything.
Right.
And we go back into the hamster wheel, and I'm like, oh, don't do that.
So this will make you happy. So MenaceCon 2.
Cue your story.
Right.
Yeah.
So about a year ago, I was at probably the worst possible state mentally. As a business owner, just in life in general. I've got 2 young kids. They're turning 11 and 9 this year. My wife and I have been married almost 13 years. Like great life, blessed, family's great.
Sure.
My parents are around, they're involved, like all the things.
Got a couple bucks.
They're great. And
sure.
so, but about a year, so we've been building Journey for 5 years, the daily grind of just boom, boom. Like I was implementing clients, I was training clients, I was doing all those things, right? And
sure.
it's like, I had to, and then 2021, I had some health issues for the first time in my life, right? And so I had, a lot of respiratory stuff going on.
Okay.
And quite frankly, it freaked me out, right?
Okay.
Like the last address I had at Mayo Hospital was from when I was in high school, when I went to the hospital. It was like, I never had it.
Yeah. Not a thing.
And so it was a weird deal. And, a lot of different things, drinking and different things go on and they happen in your life, especially coming out of COVID and all the stressors, whatever. And so there was a few times in my life where it's like, I am not a healthy person right now. And it was scaring me. Right. And so I'm grinding away at the laptop. I'm grinding away, doing all the right things and, and putting on the face and doing all the things, but behind the scenes.
You're neglecting.
Yes.
What were you neglecting?
Well,
what would be the main things you were neglecting? This is huge for business owners that are listening to this, because what happens is we want to grind and put 80 hours, 100 hours to grow our business, and we neglect some very, very important key factors in our life.
It was myself. I am the asset, right? Without me, nothing goes. My family doesn't like it. It's not an ego thing. Like literally, if you're building something for your family, if they're not there on the other side, what's the point?
Totally.
And so you have to put that, but you get lost in the build and the work and I got to get this done. I'll jump in. I'll do this, and put it all on your back, because maybe A, you think you're going to be the only one that can do it right. But B, it just, you feel like you need purpose. Like I'm doing something. So now since I'm working, then I feel like I'm not letting my team down or whatever. Right.
Okay.
So long story short, so fast forward to a year ago. So I'm a part of a mastermind group. It's a local group.
Sure.
There's about 20 of us. And there's a few of the guys that we know, like Nate and some of the Ed that we talked about earlier. But
Matt.
So that was a complete mindset shift for me. It was about 2.5 years ago joining this mastermind group. So I'm in a room with people who are very similar mindsets, but also elevated above where I'm at in my business. These are some heavy hitters.
Yeah.
One of the guys
they're cranking.
And one of these guys, they're doing tens of millions of dollars in revenue. One of the guys in our group sold his business for $100 million. I mean, it's just insane, like what you can learn from this group.
Sure.
So I'm in this group. I'm also going through this complete mind, messing with my mind. I don't know if we're cussing on this thing, but just
go for it,
complete mind fuck of like what is happening in my life, even though I'm on the right path and I know I am and I'm doing all the things, but I just was that hamster wheel. It felt like, what is my purpose? Like, what do I want to build here? What am I trying to do?
I call it stuck.
Yeah, totally. And just hours and hours and hours. So long story short, I raised my hand for this mastermind group. We do an annual summit in Flagstaff in August.
Oh, cool.
So we did one in August 2021. It's now December 2021. I raise my hand and say, hey, I want to do a session for our summit. We have internal education, like with some of the guys, give a session. And then we also bring in external educators to, facilitate. So it's a 2.5 day thing. So I raised my hand after seeing Summit 1, and I was like, I'm going to give a session. And I'm like thinking, holy shit. Like I've always been one to challenge myself on purpose just to see what happens, right?
Sure.
I'm going to learn from it or it's going to be freaking awesome.
Yeah.
And so I challenged myself in this room that I'm the youngest guy in the room at the time. I'm 37 now, and we're all about average age, but probably about 41, 42 is average age.
Sure.
and the youngest business, like my business was the youngest business as well, right? So I'm like, what the hell am I going to talk about? I just raised my hand to give a session for an hour.
Intimidating.
And I'm like, what am I going to, I go, I know, sure thing. It's not going to be payroll and HR. I'm not boring this room to death.
Let me teach you how to do
Exactly. And so I'm like, shit, what am I going to talk about? I spent a couple of months through the holidays mulling it over. And I just realized, I'm like, man, everything that I, like where I am today and what I've been able to accomplish is based on the opportunities that I took action on, the pivotal moments that I said yes to take action on things. And how did I even get in this room with these group of people? And it went all the way back to when my dad said, hey, stay with ADP for 7 years, learn the business, and then the right opportunity will come. Sure enough, Journey comes around, Kevin out in Fort Collins. We'd figure out a way to partner and launch a Phoenix location. I'm like, dude, I've been preparing for this for 7 years, literally preparing for the last 12 months. Let's go. And I was ready to jump. Then that happens. Then I get invited into BNI Paragon, Nate and that group. And so if nothing else, if you don't have a way to figure out a mastermind group and you're a business owner, just join BNI. It's you'll find people that you can talk to and collaborate with. But anyway, so I joined BNI 5 years ago, launched core members with you. It's where I met you as well.
Yep.
One of the first people was Gardner and Nate and Ed and all those guys.
Jordan.
Yeah, Jordan Adler, and which Jordan Adler is going to be a feature on the storybook, which I'll talk to you about.
Oh, dope.
In the future. So I've been staying connected with him. So that, and then I get involved with this mastermind group, which is a complete mindset shift. And so then when you challenge yourself on purpose and you force yourself to think about the opportunities that came your way, you reflect on those opportunities, you have an open mind, you redefine your purpose. Like we're all of the age at this point of like, what does the rest of my life look like? Right? Like we're at that middle, getting close to that middle age, right? We're that 40, 45. So anyone between 30 and I say 55, you still have a lot of years ahead of you to create and build and do something great for yourself. Totally. I think in your 20s, you probably, some people will have that drive, but you're still trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
Long story short, what do you want for the rest of your life? And then prepare like a crazy person. Be a knowledge seeker. Consistently seek out knowledge, reading books, go to conferences, doing all the things.
Sure.
Meeting the right people, developing relationships. And then the good opportunity that aligns comes your way. You're ready to take action on those. Right. So the whole session that I put together was all about opportunity. And I thought I can't be the only one that forgets to think about the little successes that I've had along the way. Okay. And I'm in this worst state of mind of thinking like, oh my God, like what am I doing? But we built a business for 5 years. We have hundreds of small business clients here in the Phoenix area. We're growing our team. Like who am I to say this sucks? Right. Like this is ridiculous. Like what?
According to who?
Right. Exactly.
The word assume.
Exactly.
One of my favorite words for 2023, assume.
Exactly. And so you forget, you make an ass out of you and me, right? So you forget to take the time to appreciate yourself and the things that you've done. And so I built the whole session on opportunity. I figure I can't be the only one in this room that forgets that. And it was all about pivotal moments. It was all talking about how you maintain an open mind, how you continue to reach out to people. Okay, so OPPO flow. OPPO is an acronym: open mind, P, purpose, second P, preparation, second O, opportunity. Okay. So if you have that foundation, you can realize and recognize good opportunity. And good opportunity is one that aligns with your purpose and it aligns with your purpose, all the things that you're working towards. It's not being a yes man. It's not saying, yeah, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to do this and spreading yourself. It's a lot. You should probably say no more often than you say yes. Sure. But when you're saying yes, it's to the good opportunities and then you see it through, right? You're challenging yourself on purpose. You're leveraging your experience and your network and the relationships that you've built. You're taking action, immediate action, and going all in. Right. And so if you don't go all in, you're selling yourself short on that opportunity. Like starting a business, if you're not of the mindset that you're going to go all in and there is no plan B, it's very difficult to, that thought is constantly going to creep in your mind of like, I don't know. If there is no plan B, yeah, you just have to go. You got to stop. You got to take that out of your mind. Right. So once you take action, then I have this whole be a duck mentality, which is like where you let things roll off your back. Ducks can't get wet in a rainstorm. And it's a shitty situation. It's out of your control and they keep cruising. So we get hit with so much at us where things out of our control try to derail us and you just got to be a duck, let it roll off your back. You win or learn. There's no such thing as failure. Kobe Bryant talks about it a lot. We've talked about Tim Grover, relentless and winning. He talks about Kobe, the trainer and all that stuff, right? So Kobe was, growing up, I'm a basketball guy. I coached my kids in basketball and he was my guy. I was just a tad too young to, I saw MJ, but I was about 7 years old when they were playing the Suns and all that. So sure. I know all about, all that stuff. But anyway, long story short, then you have success, but it's your perception of success. It's not anyone else's perception. And it's either achieving your goals or whatever, and you keep stacking those wins, or you're creating more opportunity from that opportunity that you said yes to. So OPPO flow is cyclical. I built this whole session on it, defined the framework, did a really cool interactive workshop with music, and we wrote things down, and guys shared stories, and it was a really cool talk. And but it was the first time I ever done it, right? And so I'm like, well, I don't know how this is going to go. I built it, we did it. Afterwards, the feedback was phenomenal, right? Okay. And the guys were like, That was
This is in December of last year.
This is August 2022. August 2022. So August 2022, right? So I get the positive feedback and I'm like, man, this could be something, right? Like this literally just the research of this summit and the session or the research of this session, put it on for this summit is what got me out of my mental funk. That's what got me out of my rut was just thinking about all these things and building this out, right? At the end of the day, we're all creators. We're built to create and develop and build, right? This is who we are. And I think we're happiest when we can, and you have the freedom to do that.
Sure.
And so as I'm building this out, it's just like, oh my God, it just reinvigorated so much energy and motivation. I started sharing these things I was learning with my team and all this stuff because we were growing our team right about the same time. Mm-hmm. So I do this and I start putting together, I get the LLC, I get the EIN, I get the website, I'm building this out, but I'm like, just like setting up social media, I'm posting some things here and there, whatever. But I have no real direction of where it's going. I just know it's a cool idea and I think it can help people, right? Sure. And I felt called that if it worked for me, I want to help people. So fast forward, I go to MenaceCon January 2023. And the one nugget, right? You said like, I don't take note. I'm a terrible note taker. Like I don't like sit and write pages and pages. I'll write down one thing in my notes on my phone and that's that. But I like wrote down a note from each speaker and all that stuff. But the one that said, I think it was Brad Lee, said, I can't remember who said it first, but it said, you can't help anybody if they don't know who you are. Right? You can't help it. I think you even said this. Right?
Well, Grant Cardone says it. If they don't know you, they can't flow you.
Yeah. Okay. So you can't help anybody if they don't know who you are.
Sure.
Right? And if I feel like I'm called to help someone or business owner or just someone in life, it doesn't matter who you are or what you're doing.
Sure.
If you're in a rut and you can't figure out how to get out of it, I truly believe that this mindset is what got me out of it, of redefining purpose and putting the work in and the positivity and figuring it out and recognizing and challenging yourself on purpose to jump at opportunities and yada, yada, yada. It flows and it gets you out of these things. It reinvigorates more interest. So I'm like, well, how am I going to help anybody if they don't know who I am? Sure. I'm not a social media guy. I never was, right? And that's like, how many times have you heard that in your life? Oh, I don't do social media. You know, it's like, it's for the influencers or whatever.
Dude, even my clients like, oh, I don't do social media. And I'm like, you're talking to the wrong dude.
Yeah, totally, right? So I get...
I've done millions, plural, of dollars in revenue.
Just because you're there, right?
Yeah, per year.
But the difference is, I think people perceive that the amount of videos and posts and things like, oh, as an influencer, you're an influencer. But like, no, you're a thought leader, right? You're an expert in your field. You're provoking thought in a positive way. That is an unbelievable thing that people don't realize. Like, I'm not out here. The product is my product, and the product is me. Like, I'm like, if you like me, know, like, and trust me, you're gonna want to do business with me, right?
Yep.
And so I go to MenaceCon. I get the nudge that I needed of like the fear of, oh, what are people going to think if I start doing social media and all this stuff, right? And I think it was Brad Lee. He says, stop trying to figure out how to create the content. Just be the content. Just take your phone out and record what it is. What did you do today? And just talk about it.
Love it.
You're just sharing stories. It was the nudge that I needed to take OPPO Flow to the next level. And so now we've got a podcast coming out, collaborating with a buddy of mine who's really into this flow state, treating the business in your body as a business asset.
Love it.
And so sharing opportunity stories, and it's called the Success Flow podcast. It's got to play on successful, but it's all about your perception of success. And we do it between him and I, and then we also have others that we'll bring on, which we got to have you on soon once we get this thing rolling.
Sure.
And then I've got this email storybook. It's like a newsletter format, but it's not a newsletter. It's not your typical black and white boring email. It's entertaining. It's inspiring. There's colors. There's gifts. It's an easy read, 3 to 4 minute quick hitter that I send out on Thursday afternoons. And it's all about sharing the framework of this OPPO full mindset as well as opportunity stories of other people. So Jordan Adler, who we were talking about, I reached out to him. I was like, hey, would you be interested? He's like, hell yeah, let's do it. And everyone that I've reached out to is like, dude, this is dope. I'm super excited to share my story and say what are the pivotal moments that got me out of not a great situation. Here is where I am, right? So it's opportunity stories of people who have done something of significance. Doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be, it's just something.
Or an impact. Doesn't have to be a dollar amount either. Right. It can be an impact.
It's never a dollar amount. It's an impact on like, what did you do of significance that changed the trajectory of your life? We all want to fulfill our dreams. We all have but if you stay on the path, an opportunity story is a pivotal moment that led you on a path towards growth, towards your happiness and success, whatever that it means for you. But anyway, so it's awesome. I got the OPPO Flow talk, going to start, going in with different businesses and their teams and just trying to bring that energy back. And at Journey and our team in Phoenix, we do quarterly meetings, and every quarter we go through our numbers and profit loss. We talk about that. We're transparent with our group.
Sure.
But we share these types of stories like the bamboo story and the starfish story. Nick, right? He told the starfish story at MenaceCon. I stole that. And I literally the next week I shared it with my team and they were like, That's the most amazing story I've ever
But I
heard.
helped this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
but I made
good.
an impact on that, right? So those little things that you can share with your team and pick up on. Have you heard the bamboo story? You know that one? Okay, so the Chinese farmer.
Let's end with this.
Yeah.
Let's end with
So we'll end with this. So the Chinese farmer, he's out there, the bamboo shoot, right? He's out there to grow. He plants a seed, and he goes out there and starts watering it. A month later, nothing happens. Okay, so he goes back out every morning for a year. Nothing happens, right? 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. He's watering this thing every day. Nothing is happening. And he's like, okay, year 5, he kept the process going. Year 5, the bamboo shoot in 6 weeks shoots up 80 feet, straight up in the air. That's how this thing grows. It takes 5 years to lay
80 feet?
80 feet. Bamboo shoots 80 feet in the air. And the whole
80 feet is ginormous. That's like redwood.
Yes.
Like,
they're like bamboo forests. Like they're massive. I didn't realize this, but it's massive. So, he spent 5 years watering this thing with no.
they go down first.
It was just the foundation and the root system to be able to support an 80-foot tall, massive, successful thing, right? And so the whole idea is
5 years.
5 years, how
not
long it
5
takes.
days, not 5 weeks.
5 years.
Those of you that are short-sighted, like, oh, I want success now. I'm like, dude. I was like, whenever you do anything, think about it in years, not months or weeks or days, for sure.
It's always years. So it's having faith in your potential. If you're aligned and you're on the right path, continue pushing forward, continue trusting the process.
Sure.
And it's a really neat story. And that's where the Successful podcast that we're doing, we have a bamboo shoot in our podcast art, cover art. And it's just that whole idea, that premise of it. It's just, you have to build the foundation. You have to have that open mind. You have to define your purpose. You have to prepare, recognize opportunity, and then continue down your path towards success and happiness.
There you go. All right, guys. Stephen Harris, thanks for joining us, dog. Appreciate it, buddy.
Appreciate you having me on.
My name is Jason Payne. I'm the host of the Sexy Business Status podcast. I want to bring Steve on. Appreciate his energy and what he's doing with his business. And he was also, like I said, at MenaceCon and got a good nugget, and I wanted to share that story. So appreciate you all. Have a great day and be great.